Well, President Trump is reportedly considering a military operation in Iran to seize about 400 kilos, it's about 1,000 pounds of uranium. Now, that's according to the Wall Street Journal, which is citing U.S. officials. The U.S. and Israel bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran last June. Trump initially said that they were completely destroyed, but a later assessment by the Pentagon contradicted his claim. Experts believe the highly enriched uranium is located at 2 of the sites that the U.S. and Israel hit. Well, I'm joined now by H.A. Hellyer. He's with the Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security Studies. He is an authority on geopolitics and security in the Middle East. Mr. Hellyer, it's good to have you with us. So this report by the Wall Street Journal, they're saying that any military operation to seize uranium by force would require specially trained elite forces. Those forces would have to remove radioactive material from a war zone. They say it would be the most challenging operation that Trump has ever ordered. Is it even possible?
Thank you very much for having me. The question isn't, is it really possible? In my opinion, anything's possible. That's not the issue. The issue is how likely it is, what risks there are. I think, frankly, it's a very dangerous undertaking. I do have to emphasize that doesn't mean that the Trump administration wouldn't necessarily try. We've seen multiple times over the past, not just the past month, but over the past year, that the Trump administration has not only acted unpredictably or erratically, but also in ways that clearly show that they're not listening to expertise even within the broader system of American government. And this is what I think people also have to understand as a major difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2. In Trump 1, there was still a policy process. You still had experts within the State Department, the Pentagon, and so on being listened to and being able to actually shape policy in some way. I think that is much more limited now. I think that there was some sort of suggestion in D.C. that they could strike Iran and it would result in regime change along the lines of Venezuela. Yet none of that was ever going to play out. It's not rocket science. I am not the most insightful analyst in the world to have known that this would be incredibly unlikely before the war began, because this is a consensus in Washington, D.C. among any serious analyst of the region. But they did it anyway. So I think we ought to keep that in mind as we consider whether or not the Trump administration may attempt to do something like that.
Well, let's assume that the U.S. president were to order this kind of operation. What reaction would you expect from Iran?
I think the Iranians would fight back quite strongly. I don't think that they necessarily succeed in holding the Americans back, but I think that they would probably inflict huge casualties on any force that came into Iranian territory. And I think that it would probably also encourage the regime to put out messages of, rallying around the flag. I suspect that some would be taken in by that. I don't think that many. And I think there's also something else that maybe your viewers need to understand, that the regime of Iran is incredibly unpopular inside of Iran. There ought not to be any doubt about that. That doesn't mean that they're all willing to fight in order for that regime to come tumbling down, because they'll also be concerned about fragmentation of the state more generally and chaos. And I think that they would be right to be quite cautious in that regard. So it doesn't mean that because there haven't been huge mass protests on the streets, that suddenly the regime has gained popularity. It simply means that people are concerned about crackdowns, among the cost of engaging in dissent openly, and also what could happen if the state were to fracture and fragment, utter chaos.
The U.S. president is also considering a possible move on Karg Island, which is considered the heart of Iran's oil exporting industry. What's the likelihood of that taking place, would you say?
I appreciate that you would like to know. I would also like to know. But there have been a number of different moves that have been floated over the past month, not simply about that particular island, also about the three disputed islands with the United Arab Emirates, Abu Musa, the Greater and Lesser Tums, which would have been, very sensible in terms of just pure tactics, huh? Fairly easy, I think, for them to take. And so far, nothing has happened. Now, having said that, not all of the material, not all of the assets that would be required for all of these different types of operations are yet in theater. So I think that Trump can change his mind several times before he's actually got to make a choice. So is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? Honestly, I think that's a very difficult question. And it's not because there aren't signals one way or the other. It's because if I were to answer that question to you, it's a very sensible question, but I would be judging on the basis of expertise, of analysis, where I think this could go. I don't think that's how the White House is actually proceeding in this war. I think a number of things have taken place already that show very clearly that they're simply not prepared. They didn't expect the Strait of Hormuz to become such an issue. They did think that it was possible and plausible that there would be regime change in the sense that there would be a new administration that would cut a deal. They did think there might be protests and so on and so on and so on. None of those panned out. And it's not because their calculations were, 50-50. So their calculations were just wildly off. And it just shows that they're not listening to expertise on the, not on the ground, but within Washington even itself. It's a very ideologically driven war, I think, within the administration itself. And of course, very heavy lobbying from the Israelis and their allies in Washington, D.C.
You say their calculations were off. I mean, do you think that the intelligence, the intel was that bad, or is this a case of the U.S. president just ignoring the intel?
So I don't think that the intelligence was that bad. I suspect that they had the same intelligence that pretty much everyone did, which was that the Iranian regime is brutal, is unpopular, has different layers of command and control structures, so that when one layer gets taken out, there are succession plans that immediately come into play, which is why a month after they assassinated the supreme leader, the state is still very much in operation. And reports that I received, and I am not a member of the American government with the widest intelligence network, but even I know that senior officials within Iran were told to set up succession plans for 3 to 4 levels down, i.e., if they get hit, then there's one person down that will immediately take over, and after him, immediately take over, and after him, immediately take over, and after him, immediately take over. I mean, it's built for resilience. So the question isn't about intelligence. It's about people actually relaying this to the president and to a very small group around him, and being very clear about what that intelligence actually says, and them being listened to.
Okay. Mr. Hellyer, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we appreciate your valuable insights tonight. Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you.